Welcome, everybody. My name is Kris MacQueen. I am going to be your host today for the What Juices You podcast, and I'm a senior facilitator with Juice Inc. I work very, very closely with Brady Wilson, who has hosted many of these episodes, but I do have the privilege of occasionally coming alongside and stepping into conversations. At which, as you know by now, this is a podcast that is really focused on having conversations with leaders, with individuals who have really made significant contributions into their world, often through business and through leadership. And this really is a conversation that explores what are some of those things that are intrinsically energizing. Literally, we ask the question, what juices you? And so I have the incredible privilege of having Paul Ansloos joining us today. Paul, just say hi real quick.
Hey, morning, Kris. Good to be here. Thank you for being a part of the show.
Yeah. Really excited to have you. Paul said good morning, which makes sense. For me, it's afternoon. Paul is joining us from the West Coast. And so, yeah, it's looking forward to this. Full disclosure, Paul and I go back a long way, dear friends. But as we were looking at inviting people to join us in this conversation, Paul was one of the very first people who popped into my mind as someone who would be incredibly valuable to have on this show, in this conversation, because Paul is, I would say, Paul is one of the very smartest leaders that I know. Astute businessman, an entrepreneur. No, this is true. And someone who actually I would say I would look to as not just a friend, but also a mentor in important ways. And so in stepping into this conversation, really looking forward to starting to unpack some of those things that have been those intrinsic energizers. And so again, what we want to talk about today is getting clear on what is it that juices you, that really fuels you, that lights up your best contributions. And so why don't we get started there, Paul?
Yeah.
You look back over the tenure of your career, and you've had various different permutations of that.
Right.
You have founded a company, ExpensePoint. I think you are officially the founder emeritus, is the LinkedIn title that I see.
That is correct. That is correct.
Incredibly dignified. So you've lived an entire arc. You have things you're engaging in now. You have where you've come from, and so let's just get started. What is it over the arc of your story that you have been able to tap into that is so intrinsically energizing for you? You don't have to energize it; it actually animates you. What is that thing?
Yeah, I mean, and thanks again for inviting me here. I think for when I was thinking about this over the last number of days, in my career, and ExpensePoint was a 24-year career for me, from founding to building a business to letting that business and handing that over to other people to nurture and to grow. And before that, I had tenure with American Express as well. So combining the knowledge of what I learned a lot, that was sort of my university of life, actually.
Yeah.
Express, it's a wonderful company, and I gained a lot of insight there. But one of the things I found while I was working for American Express is depleted value in a business process in our particular field, which is expense management.
Right.
So taking a very ordinary process within the company, everyone knows how to do an expense report if they're in business, of course, and restoring value in that process in terms of people's time, in terms of documentation accuracy and things like that, and making what is considered a fairly mundane business process and adding value to it. And so for me, when I first started looking at that and got into the sort of the incubation side of the business, just the thought process and bringing it to life was actually about restoring value and in a particular way, in a particular business process. So developing a software program that would take what is currently being done to, back then, to account for business expenses and automating that and making that a good thing for a business. And I just loved that process of providing something that could change people's lives, albeit small,
Yep.
but changing their lives. And I think I've kind of looked at that arc over my life and thought, what is it about me that I really like in terms of life and business. And I love the idea of in this particular case with ExpensePoint, restoring value back to a business in terms of its the time and people and management, and then also in and systems, but also in people.
Hmm.
Sometimes we find people along the way that come to us and they don't feel valued and they don't
Right.
feel important and they don't feel juiced in another term. And having had employees come through and working for us, I love the collaboration and seeing people being the absolute best that they can be in all facets of their life, not just their work life with us, but also personally, and getting to know them personally as well. So that, I think, for me, it's like my wife and I, Sherry, we've just restored a 1938 home in British Columbia, and it's been a task because what we could have easily done is demolished it and built a brand new home. And what we looked at is, and the common phrase, "How are the bones?" And so we looked at the bones of this beautiful building and said, "They're good bones. The foundation is good. Why don't we, through life, through the last, 90 years or so, um, it's taken a lot of hits and weather and people and some people have looked after, some people kind of have not. And so I look at that and we say, well, we could just rebuild from scratch, but actually let's take what's already being established that's great and skin it, redo it. Like let's take those bones that are perhaps tired and breathe new life into them. And that's sort of a bit of a metaphor for sort of the question is, I love taking those things and saying, hey, and it's like with that with people, or a process, right? Um, we've had some wonderful people come through our doors over the years who are just like who've got great foundation, but they're tired and they've just been beat up by the world, not necessarily work, but by
Yeah.
the world at large. And so when you can recognize that, and then you can say, well, how can I breathe new life into that for you? And I think that's sort of what gets me up in the morning, and it still does, by the way.
I love that. I mean, and it makes so much sense. And I'm hearing a theme. To me, there is a very clear theme that emerges both in the story of you recognizing a need in your experience with American Express, seeing process happen that if it, what I'm hearing is, hey, there's a lot of value that's happening within this organization, and there are points of unnecessary interference that are actually getting in the way of adding value, most value. And so seeing an opportunity to bring some refinement there. And I actually hear that translating through in a couple of different ways. You talk about this restoration project in your home that you're in
Right.
BC, and going through this and recognizing, hey, there's actually something like the easier path would be to just take it down and rebuild it, but there is a wanting to protect value. It
Right.
seems to me that that is the common theme, and even individuals coming in and you can see that they've got something to offer, but again, maybe there's some interference. There are some things that are getting in the way, and so building out those and not just protections. I think that that's one element, but creating a sense of environment where what is valuable can really shine, can really generate and add even more value. Am I kind of getting close to the?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I I gotta I admit to you, this is what I did this today. These are thoughts that I've been having. And so listen, I go to my AI generator today.
Of course. Yeah.
I went.
I'm with you, man. I'm
It's,
with
it's
you.
it's laughable, I know, but I went to ChatGPT and I said, and I didn't give it any cues. I just said, "You know me," which is kind of funny having a conversation.
Yeah.
I said, "What do you see is the thing that really, juices me up? Like
Yeah.
makes me who I am." And it's kind of interesting. It came back. We're quite broad context, but it distilled down actually to these things where you know it nailed it. And so
Right.
I thought, well, okay, that's a lot of conversations. I've been using ChatGPT now since it first came out, and I've got
Yeah.
threads galore, like hundreds of them.
Fair
And
enough. And guilty as charged. Yeah, I hear you.
yeah, and what was interesting is that to be able to sort of think that about yourself, and then have something objective come back and say, this is what it seems to be who you are, and nailing it. I think that, like, wow, when I talk about home restorations, I actually do this. I've done it a number of times, by the way, just
Yeah.
for sometimes as a project for a resale, and I'm in the middle of another one at the moment. But you can go into an old building, and for most people, they would run for the hills, right? It's just like, I'm out of here. It's smelly. It's horrible. I did that with a building in Winnipeg, in our head office, actually.
Right. I've seen that. I mean, that is a stunning piece of work. I've been in that building since you got your fingerprints over it, and that's a
Yeah.
remarkable office space.
Well, I walked in there with my, building partner, business partners who looked at this building, because we were, it's kind of that was a side hustle, kind of like
Yeah.
um, real estate and so on. It's mine. I want to paint this picture. It's mine's 35, and we're shivering to death. And we're in we're in this old warehouse in Winnipeg, and it literally, I am like, my hands are becoming iced. Like, it's that cold. I'm walking around with the, but I'm in it. I'm in the moment, and we're looking at this old warehouse with, it looked horrible, and people have been lighting fires in the bottom of it, like over the years, staying warm and all this kind of stuff. Pigeons all over the place, and yet we're both standing there with the lens of, oh, this is beautiful, right? And we can unlock the potential in this place. Now, I know that that's sort of a special thing, because not a lot of people can see that, right? They just go, oof, get me out of here. But then there's people who can go in, and I think that those, I think that's sort of who I am, who can sort of uniquely look and say, if you get past all the grub and the grime and the life and everything else, and see its potential, what could it be? And then also, am I up for that, potential?
Yeah.
That's the other question that you have to ask yourself is, am I up for doing this? Well, then those are the kind of markers that you have to ask yourself. And it's like that. And as you know, we turned that building, which is a 1885 building, one of the oldest buildings in Winnipeg, and converted into,
Wow.
in the office space, a gorgeous old office
Yeah.
space. And so that is what really juices me up. And I saw that in ExpensePoint, bringing a software program full of features and full of good things that could automate a process that was outdated, laborsome, not adding value, to doing that. And hopefully, it's great to sort of say we did all these great things, but actually we had clients and have clients, I think, about 106 countries plus, plus or minus.
Yeah.
So it was, it's a delight. It's like somebody looking at your art as an artist, or dancing to your songs that you play, right?
Yeah.
It just gives you utter joy. So for that's been me.
If I can hone in, I'm hearing a few different things, and I would love to find, and maybe it's a conflation of these different elements, or
Mm,
maybe there's one that really is at the center, so that the point at which there's like that spark of
yeah.
initiative, that spark of, oh, we're so going to do this. And so I'm hearing there's a moment that's related to you walk into a space, you recognize a process, you encounter an individual, and you, with your unique set of eyes, see the good bones and you go, oh, we can work with this. That's one moment. You alluded to there being like an evaluation process, which is okay. What is the through line between what I see is the potential that I'm and actually the realized potential,
Right.
and so that's process.
Yeah.
And then there is that moment where it's realized, where it's been now delivered and enacted on. I can imagine that and I know I've encountered people where any one of those is where the sweet spot is. The moment of I see this, and that's actually where the at least the initial juice comes from, or it's no, this is an environment where I can build a really beautiful process is going to catalyze something, but it's about the process. Other
Yeah.
people, it's all about I'm gonna feel that spark, and it's all related to the outcome when I
Mm.
see it, when the impact has actually happened. So
Yeah.
beginning, middle, end. Is there one of those that you think is really like deepest for you in terms of that reservoir of you're going to put the Paul on this project?
Yeah. That's a really good question. I think for me, Kris, I think the first thing is to look at whatever that potential is. So if you're building a team and you say, well, we need this in our team, and you might interview a bunch of people for that position. But there is always that one where you go, or two maybe if you're lucky, that you go, oh, I like what very rare is that somebody comes all prepackaged and ready to go.
Yes.
Your vision, right? And it does happen. I'm not saying it doesn't, but it's a rare thing. But there are those people that come in almost like the unicorn comes and steps in front of you, and you go, oh, that is, and that for me is the start.
Okay.
It's like when our development team used to come and we would talk about um, new features, right, in the software, and and we have wonderful, beautiful staff, like just fabulous, like creatives, and I learned so much. I would like to take credit for everything that we nailed good, but I'd be silly to think so. Okay, and
Yeah.
looking through rose-colored glasses. I have a wonderful artistry and artisans in my midst,
Yeah.
in all facets of the business. And we had a small team, but they were really, they caught the vision. They're really dedicated. And I'd be sitting in a dev meeting, and we'd have them, every 2 weeks we'd sit down and say, what do we want to bring to Expense Point? And then I hear a bunch of things, and it'd be that one where it goes, that's it. That
Mm.
is, I can get behind this.
It's got the zhuzh.
Yeah, it's got the that's uh, what is the French term anyway? Je ne sais quoi, like there's certain
Right.
something to
Certain
it.
something something. Yes.
Yes, that's what it is. And I'm sorry for the French listeners if I said that poorly, but I would say that there are those things that spark you as a leader, perhaps, and my role was a leader, so um, I could listen to those things, and then when it did spark, then we would have to break down, which is the second phase,
Yeah.
is okay, is this doable? What's the end result of this? So I knew intuitively this would, at the end of this, would be great, but there's a whole lot of in between. And so, do we have the capability to do it? Do we have the will to do it? Do we have the budget to do whatever it might be? And I would see. It's funny because I go, oh, I love this idea, and I could see our CTO would light up, and because he brought something and he would just, yeah, so we could do this and we can do this, and could have this feature, and I'm now we're getting, it's like we're jamming
Yeah.
and spitballing back and forth, and that creative thing, well, that's just like, you know musicians jamming and
Yeah.
hitting every note together. That is just so cool to be able to have that creative process. And then you could get to the point where you go, well, that was great. That was great. The reality is you can't do this. So you have to go through all of those stages, I think, to get to where you're going. But the key for me is just knowing, hey, this has got legs, and so we need to explore this further. And then the other side of it is to really quickly, I guess over time, you just really learn to quickly go, that's not what we need right now.
Right.
Doesn't mean it's not valued. It just means that it's not at that point in time what we need right now. So for every old building I've walked into 10 others
Yeah.
that have value, that have, I'm a kind of multifaceted life, a tech company and a building and people. But you learn to discern very quickly and sometimes actually, Kris, I would say mostly because of mistakes.
Right.
You don't want to walk through the same door and get hit in the nose too many times. And so,
Yeah.
yeah, I think that it kind of starts in that sort of like something in your brain lights up and you go, I can get behind this.
So a
Does that make
high
sense?
element. Oh, it totally does. And there are just some themes that are coming out that I think are really, really relevant here. So, I mean, there is a countenance that comes on your face when you start talking about those moments when you're there in a meeting and that, in our language, the juices are flowing, ideas are
Yeah,
flowing, and
yeah,
something happens and it just catalyzes the moment.
right.
And that countenance, I mean, for our listeners, they maybe can't see it, but viewers who maybe are watching this on YouTube probably did see that. There is an energy that came into your face in that moment. What is interesting to me, though, is that there are some individuals for whom that moment is catnip. In other words, it is game over. Once you encounter that, we are now down that path.
Yeah.
I've been guilty of that, falling in
Oh,
love with
yeah.
my own ideas or someone else's, and boom, down. And there is a pragmatism that I've heard that I feel like it's part of that process, but a high awareness for the spark
Mm.
and a fanning of that, and hey, let's not tap that down. So a real eagerness for creativity, for the right mix of adventure and risk. Anytime we're wanting to learn by failure, there's an associated journey there that we're taking
Yes.
the occasional risk. But I'm hearing that there is a calculatedness, a pragmatic approach to, okay, now let's take stock of the great idea. what what would we need to bring to bear to bring
Mm.
that thing to fruit? And then there was a third component as well. And again, it kind of architects into the beginning, middle, end piece, but is this going to add the value that we need to add right now as the
Mhm.
through line? So it's not just how much do we love this idea. That is important. And it sounds like that is the spark, the starting
Yes.
place. Then there is this sort of process that is maybe, I mean, I know you well enough, a generosity of let's explore this, but let's explore this to see practically what are we talking about here.
Yes.
And then ultimately, though, the go no go. What I'm hearing is this going to generate the value that we need it to, whether it's for us, whether it's for somebody else,
Yeah.
is really the filter process. Do I have that right?
Yeah. Yeah, I would say you nailed it. I mean, that is always sort of, and for us in project management, and when you're bringing something new and you go, hey, that's great. My accountants rises up, and then we kind of break it down. How could we get there? Well, we could do it this way. And then it's sort of go, and in fact, sometimes you don't know what the end result. You can imagine it, but you don't actually know what it's going to be. And
Right.
so one of the things that I think as a team we would always try to do, or if you're looking at an investment, then you have to test it.
Right.
Test your theories, test your litmus test, whatever you're doing, rather than just go into it full steam. Because what can happen is it can have the opposite effect if you don't do that, because you can actually suck the living daylights out of your team,
Right.
your budget, yourself, the clients. it could be a miss, and it could be a big miss.
Yeah.
In the world of tech, you can't afford too many misses. I'm not saying that people don't, but the time that you spend to develop something and that becomes a miss, now the next thing, if it's a hit, and assuming that it is going to take us equal amount of more time to do. So whatever that next feature might be. But now you've doubled the time. And in the world of tech, things go so quickly that your competition's going way ahead. So, and you can miss it completely.
Right.
So it's so important to, I've found, to sort of do small incubation tests about whether, if you can, not always,
Yeah.
but if you can, hey, let's just see this thing in action. And I remember with ExpensePoint, we were looking at AI as a nuance to our business. Now AI has been around it's been around a long time, but in the commercial sense that we all know, it's been the last
Yeah, like the large language models sort of thing. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yes, yeah. And so, we were looking at receipt imagery reading using AI because it is phenomenal, right? So it's great. We're all behind it, but we needed to litmus test it. And if it wasn't adding value, and I'm talking like in seconds of time to give that result, then we'd have to ask ourselves, is it valuable? Well, so you model it and you burn through cajillions of receipts just to sort of see, hey, is it adding value very quickly? And it did. So it was a good result. We found that we could have receipts read within 2 or 3 seconds, and not just that, but getting the data exactly from that model where we wanted to. So it was very important. But if we would have just gone full steam ahead and not done that bit of modeling, and so I'm telling you a success story, but there are some where you go, ooh, that kind of didn't work that well.
Yeah.
And there's been in every business, there's a few of those, right? Now you just lose a little bit of steam in that, but there's nothing worse than going out, and losing a game if you're a sports team. Like, you want to win. And it's the same sort of demoralization for your team if you bring a feature and it just falls flat, or it didn't work, or whatever it might be. So I think it's important to sort of separate your, oh gosh, this is great, like this is going to be the next biggest thing, to going through these things properly and putting aside your personal feelings about it too a little bit. You
Yeah.
start off with those things, right? I was a user of our software, so I kind of intimately knew what I was liking and knew what I would like, and so,
Mhm.
and that's another important thing, is that you have to be always with your ear to the ground of the end user as well. Whether you're selling software or Windows or whatever it is, you really need to know what your customers are looking for, and so there is that
Yeah.
element. So sort of separate. It is a process in separating that.
Yeah, and I think it's a really important thing to underscore that, and the energy that we encounter, when we find something that is intrinsically fueling or energizing for us, we can, let's take golf for a second, or for a moment. We played a game of golf recently. I haven't gotten much better, Paul, incrementally. Um,
I still have pain in
but
my shoulder, so I haven't done either.
I am I'm an enthusiastic. Like, I really have, for whatever reason, maybe I just enjoy suffering. I have a lot of energy for the sport. I have come to really enjoy it. I found a certain love of it again. And there is a vast difference between what I do with that energy and what another, a dear friend of mine who probably could have gone pro if he chose to. Instead, he's a business leader. But when we go golfing, I would say we have a similar amount of enthusiasm, similar love of the experience of the things that I love. The difference is that his name happens to be Kris as well. Other Kris has a very efficient deployment of that energy,
Mm.
right? I tend to burn it. I swing a lot. I, I even swing and miss occasionally. And so what I'm hearing is, we will protect the source of energy, that spark. And to be honest, I don't know that all leaders actually do that. I think sometimes we can be so glommed onto or focused on, no, we need to have efficient deployment of our resources, that we build protections around that can actually get in the way of the spark, because the spark can be intimidating, because there is momentum that comes when we feel that
Oh yeah, yeah.
that hey, oh, this is a good idea. And so building a protection around that, even if we had a moment where it seemed like, hey, that was a great idea, and we didn't do anything with it because we
Mm.
decided, that doesn't mean we're not going to meet again in 2 weeks and have another brainstorming meeting, is what I'm hearing, right? So we're going to
Yeah,
protect this,
yeah.
and we're going to ensure that we go through a good process, so that what we do with the energy that gets generated in those moments
Mhm.
is, if nothing else, an intelligent deployment of it, even if it's not a guaranteed outcome, but we're going to make sure we go through a good process. I'm hearing that that's really been important to you.
Yeah, yeah. And it's so important to recognize that, like, I think that you know, there's times probably where I haven't, I've been a victim of my own ideas and that lack of process. And, but I do know that when you deploy good process, you learn about good process too. It is a much better, or it seems to have a much better outcome.
Mhm.
Um, and it there are certain things that we have, in my history with ExpensePoint, for example. We used to have a wish list of things that we wanted to do, and if every tech company could do their entire wish list, I'm sure that we would see some amazing things.
And some
Um,
really dumb ones too,
and
I'm gonna
some,
say.
yes, and those too. And actually, it's funny because sometimes you look back and you go, so glad we didn't do that, you know.
Right.
And then there's times you go, okay, we really need to get to this now. It was a great
Yeah,
idea then, it's a great idea now, and
yeah,
let's rejuice, let's rekindle that flame that we
yeah.
want. And in fact, Kris, I would say that sometimes when you do go back to an idea that you do rekindle, um, there's an even bigger desire for it because than there was the first time, because
Interesting.
there might be more maturation in your processes to support it,
Yeah,
or in your software in this case, or whatever. Or if you're a manufacturer, you might have better tools to manufacture, and so this would be a better time for us to do this. And so I think that those are some of the things that where you go. And also just to note that it's important to communicate that to your team, to
right.
say, what, love this idea, because that might have come from one of the team members.
Yeah.
And what you don't want to do is just sort of like, you know, um, put it away and dismiss it. Is actually say, hey, Joe, this is a wonderful idea. We're just going to park it for these reasons, perhaps.
Yeah.
And then when you do come back to it, it's like, hey, Joe brought up this idea. I think we should look at it again. To give credit for Joe to actually,
I can
you know what I
only
mean? Like,
imagine. I love that. And I can only imagine what happens to an individual and to a team, because these things have, teams have memories, all right? Individuals have memories, but culture does too, I think. And I can just imagine there being a little bit of tension, not unhealthy, when we look at an idea and say, hey, there's some real value here, but we're not sure that the time is right or that we're ready. We're going to put it on the shelf over here. And there can be a moment of almost a suspended disbelief, like, yeah, right. Right. I know what put a pin in it means. Um, but then 6, 8 months, a year later, I can just imagine what happens to the team when you or whoever it is comes in and says, "Hey, remember that idea that we talked about? Now is the right time."
yeah.
I have a feeling that things like trust and credibility and the willingness to actually believe you and to believe the general intentions of the team,
Yeah,
that feels like a very virtuous process, actually, in terms of
it
leaving
is.
impact.
I'm smiling because I think I've said this in meetings before, over the years. Our team members were, I always consider them friends as well, right? Not just colleagues, but friends. I mean, you work with this. I actually got that is still today, a lot of long tenure within our team.
Yeah.
And when you bring things back, I've sat there and go, was this my idea or was it yours? I can't remember. and the graciousness coming back up. Well, it could be your idea, but I think, I mean, it could be. Yeah, I mean,
I remember it. Yeah.
you're the CEO. I mean, I think it's I think it's important, to give credit where credit's due.
Yeah.
And you you get so busy in business sometimes you forget those things, and I'm sure that I have, and I'm sure I've missed the mark. And the other thing too is that and when you're running a business or running a department or running a team, um, all of those you're with teams. I think it's also important to know what you're bringing versus what your colleagues are bringing, and sometimes I have my least effective time was when I was doing things that didn't make me glow.
Right.
So it was the stuff where, oh, I can't do this. And I know it's part of my job, but I got to do this. I would rather hire somebody to do this, but we don't have the budget for that right now, so I'm going to just do it. And it honestly depletes you,
Yeah.
and it just brings you down. And it's like all these, like me in the boardroom and ideas and tech and or go and see an old building and freezing. That's where I'm like,
Yeah.
but doing all of the admin, or let's say, or things that were really not in my wheelhouse, although you do them, it's important to sort of understand, and if you can compartmentalize those things and say, okay, this is not the best version of me when I'm doing this,
Right.
and I'm going to do it. And I think that's just truth and honesty here. Like it just recognizing where, because you can't always not to do those things because it is in your job description to do them.
Yeah.
Or there are things that you're okay doing them, but it's not giving you the very best version of yourself. And I know that there's been times where I could have been a better X, whatever that
Right.
was.
Yeah.
And I know it was, falling short of what other people's expectations were, even as the CEO of the company. Um, you just, I think everyone has to sort of recognize that and be kind of kind to themselves a little bit to sort of understanding that, because when that starts flowing into the good stuff about you, it can overshadow those really cool things that you really bring to the business, and the cool things, that energy that you bring, it kind of just
Yeah.
clouds it. It's just so.
Putting some protection. So I just love the eyes wide openness of this, right?
Mm,
So I mean, we all have accountabilities and responsibilities.
sure.
Some of them are the reason why we do what we do, and some of them just come along with the package. And then there are seasons, particularly when you're building a business as an entrepreneur and you're having to bootstrap, right? At least some of this stuff and all the juggling. So I'm hearing that just a couple things again, like being able. So the value of compartmentalizing in a helpful way,
Mm,
where we are building protections around some of those things that are intrinsically fuel for us, so that
yeah.
it doesn't just come out in the wash of all of the other responsibilities, because that's not going to do anyone any favors at the end of the day, right? If
Right.
we are only just in that space of depletion because of all the have tos,
Yeah.
the law of diminishing returns is going to kick in very quickly in that
It
environment.
it it does.
And when we can recognize, okay, these are the things that I have to do. These are some of the accountabilities for whatever reason. we
Mhm.
can build protections and little fueling centers, right? So,
Yes.
I've run one marathon in my life. Getting to completion, what was dependent on that was that there was appropriate fueling along the way, because there's no way that you can shore up enough resources at the front end to finish
Right.
without these micro fueling moments. And then
Yeah.
the other element that I'm hearing that I think can be so helpful for leaders is, you then when you find yourself and you are able to bring people into their sweet spot, which is not yours, to help,
Right.
there can be an incredible acknowledgement of value then in that role as well, right? So the contributions that they make, rather than, if we only are indexing on the things that matter to us, we can run roughshod over people who are adding a tremendous amount of value, but it's just not our zhuzh, and so we're not really paying attention to that. And
That's
so
right.
I just, the eyes wide openness of also acknowledging and being grateful for contributions of others, and when that is the zone for them, can
Yeah.
make for really powerful, I think, catalytic leadership,
Mhm.
that does acknowledge value. And so I hear a lot of that.
Yeah. Well, it's just affirming what you're saying, and just um, just reiterating that like there was a person in our company, is a person still there, wonderful, wonderful guy who could make a spreadsheet sing.
Right. Oh, I
Right.
love those humans.
They are like they're great. And when it came to sort of analyzing like business processes and financial processes within the business, I could hypothesize, but you have to have the person be able to really like drill into the data and the numbers. And I knew that wasn't me.
Yeah.
Now, as a and that's the thing that you have to sort of understand with with and so going back, I would give all this to this person and say, hey, can you run this? And are you able to run an analysis on this? Oh yeah, it's all just give me numbers. Okay, okay, you take the numbers, great. And they bring something back and you go, oh my gosh, that was amazing. Thank you so much. Well, to them, that's what gives them juice.
Yeah.
That's what really sets them. And he says, yeah, yeah. Like, like if you want something else, or if we can give you predictors, or I can give you this and this. And I'm like, yes, yes. Well, if we got this software, I could actually plug all of these numbers in, and so it was like, go for it. Or, I
Yeah.
can't do that. It's not in my wheelhouse to do it. And I think it's really, really important to not put so much pressure, because like as a CEO of a company, because sometimes you put this pressure on yourself, and I know it trickles down to, I'm not saying trickle down leadership. I'm just saying that it's the same for everybody. Is that
Mhm.
there are going to be certain skill sets that you're just not hitting like home runs on. And as a leader, it's also it's good to understand your team to say, hey, this person always hits a home run in this, right?
Yeah.
It's like a baseball team. They might be a home runner, and we put him in the outfield because he's, because you have two roles to play in baseball. One, you're hitting, and the next minute you're in the field, and you could be on first base, second base, so on and so forth. And so, um, and you're adequate. You'll catch the ball, 7 times out of
Yeah.
10. And I think that's really important. At least I've kind of learned a little bit, is just to say, hey, this person's really good at this, but let's not have the expectation. And I learned this later on, but let's not have this expectation that they're good. This role is X, Y, Z, all these, 10 things that they're going to be hitting a home run at all 10 of them. It's just
Yeah.
like, say, they're going to do a great job on this, and they're going to do amazing here, and we really need to help them in this, right?
It sounds like a very humanizing approach to team building,
Mm,
partnering, right? Where we can actually start to hold out for each other's highest good and actually catalyze one another's best contributions, rather than kind of having an intimidation relationship with those. I can think of
totally.
scenarios where that really starts to creep in, and you have people who are actually occasionally even saying, I've had somebody come to me and say, actually, leading an organization, and say, Kris, I'm a really strong leader. You're leading the organization. I want to make sure I'm not stepping on that I'm not stepping, on your toes in this. And it's like, I need the strength of your leadership on this team. Like, do not tamp down your best contribution.
Yeah.
It feels like a really important posture, and it's a humble posture, but it's also requires, I think, a deep sense of security in terms of being able to allow people to really step in and to have some of those, appropriate handoffs, right? We need to own what we need to
Oh
own
yeah.
and right size our responsibility and all
Yeah.
of that stuff for sure.
Yeah.
I would like to pivot to, and I think we've maybe already touched on this, but I want to give you an opportunity to even just put a finer point on it. So we've talked about the things that are intrinsically energizing and really just kind of coming out and catalyzing the contributions that you make.
Mhm.
Um, if we were to put some language to what is the juice that you actually contribute into the world. Now, this can be business, this can be beyond business, but when Paul shows up in the room, what is the thing that is actually flowing from you out into that space? What is yeah, what's the language that you would pull into that to describe what you feel like you're bringing, your juice, your contribution?
Yeah. I would like to think, um, humbly, because I think that question is very, I could just, I'm a great guy, I'm this, I'm that, and the other thing, right?
Yeah,
But
fair enough.
I would like to think that people can get a sense, and I feel this about myself, is that there's a genuine caring and a
Uh-huh.
listening ear to what people have to say. So, and an enthusiasm, right? I mean, you and I can be in a room, we can get, you know, talking about a whatever.
Yeah.
And I want to be fully engaged with you. And I've learned that over time in life, that I want to look you in the eye. I'm not going to keep looking around to see who's coming into the ring. Um, I really want to engage with you, and I think that that's very valuable. Um, and I learned that actually from it's interesting, from culture. So I think it was some Nigerian friends. And
Okay.
this culture where you say, you know how we say as North Americans or Western world, we say, "Hey, how's it going?" Right? You go, "Great, great. How are you?" "Great, great," and you kind of walk away from each other, right?
Yeah.
Was that in? Was that actually deep and intentional? It's just an acknowledgement. You may as well just say, "Hi, how are you?" Or
Exactly.
sorry,
Yes.
"Hi, hi." Forget the "how are you" part.
Yeah. Yeah.
I know it's kind and everything else, but with them or these group of people, they'd say, "How are you?" "I'm good. I'm good." Yeah, really, I'm experiencing this right now, and I learned how to slow down. Like, and
Interesting.
how are you? Like, how is your family? How's this? How's this? How's this? And so the meaning of like, how are you is just deep and
Right.
engaging. And I felt so valued when people did that to me, and still
Mm.
do that to me, by the way.
Yeah.
And how many times have we been at a party or been in a social gathering where we're having a conversation and you can see a person's eyes drifting off here or there, or even to their phone, right? I mean, it happens all the time. I see people going for dinner together. I point this out whenever I go to dinner. It just shocks me sometimes. I see couples sitting at a table, and I have my phone here, but they're doing this, right? And they're going out for dinner together, and I feel like that's, I don't know if that's just we've learned to adapt to our life environments so much so that we can do this incredible multitasking and still have this engagement one on one. I doubt it, but
Mhm.
that's so I like to say to sort of, to say what I'm saying is that when I'm with people, I want to be fully engaged with them. And if I ask people, hey, so tell me about this business that you're thinking about doing, or this idea about, or you love fishing, tell me about that, right? Like, what is it that gives you pleasure in that? Or and that's Listen, if it comes in the same wheelhouse as me, oh,
Now you're in. Yeah, like
now I'm
really
like
in.
even more in, right? It's like, oh
Yeah.
my gosh, let's just lock the doors and let you and I sit here forever and chit chat about this. So I think that that's important. We had a friend, a couple friend, Sharon and I. The lady in the relationship was bubbly and outgoing, easy to talk to, and the guy was a wallflower. I mean,
Okay.
very difficult to talk to. Couldn't get. So I learned, I can't ever use closed-ended questions with this person. Like, how are you? Good. How's your day? Good.
Yeah.
Right. And and so I learned, what did he love? Well, he actually loved Star Trek and creating models, like literal models of Star Trek stuff, right?
Yeah.
And Star Wars and all this kind. So I went home and thought, okay, Paul, I'm going to have to, like, if this is going to be a relationship, it can't be just the girls talking to me, kind of him and going like this. So I learned to get into his world and talk
Yeah.
about these things that were at the time had no interest in me, but actually once I started to get into his world, I'm thinking, I can understand this.
Your inner nerd started to show up a
My
little
inner
bit.
nerd started to come through. And so
Yeah.
I think that's what I'd like to say that I could bring is what juices me. Is actually I'm learning to understand that A, not everyone's like me,
Yeah.
and B, um, learn about what juices them. Like, learn what gets them up in the morning, because I actually love people. I really do. I do tight times of, like, I don't want to be with anybody, but there are many times that I do want to be with people, and I do want to understand what makes their life tick, in such a meaningful way that it's just us, and then I can celebrate with them the things that they love. Because I'll tell you, at the end of the day, what that does for me is it rejuices me, because I feel that it's a significant connection that
Yeah.
I benefited from, right? As well as they did. Does that make
I
sense?
love what I'm hearing. Yeah, and if I could just give an attempt at, just kind of really there is a succinct, I think, theme that emerged there, and I would say I've experienced this, Paul.
Mhm.
Um, the the thing that is going to flow from you to others, at least in those moments when, like all of us, when we are at our best, is what we're talking about,
Right.
you will give your attention.
Mhm.
You will give so attention, and mixed with curiosity, mixed with openness, for sure. But there is something about, I mean, we talk about the attention economy, and of course that is valuable. Why? Because there's so much distraction all over the place. And so, when I hear that, I can imagine how incredibly valuable, well, and I don't have to imagine, I've experienced how incredibly valuable somebody s- actually bringing their attention to the conversation, to the relationship, to the moment. Um,
Right.
and I would just mirror that back and say that feels very true to me. I
Mhm.
have one more question for you, and
Yes.
it's not a small one, but timestamp. It's possible people are listening to this far into the future.
Oh boy.
Timestamp.
What are you going to say?
Timestamp. It is November of 2025. Lots is going on in the world right now.
Yes.
Um, and one of the questions that we are asking all of our guests here is, given all that we've talked about and the things that are intrinsically energizing for you and the contributions, what would be, if you could synthesize your wish for the world, your wish for the people who are listening to this,
Mhm.
what would that be right now? Given kind of the lay of the land, what would be your best wish for this time?
Good question. Um, I think that I kind of wonder, in the arc of history, forever, have people been saying that, these are the best of times, these are the worst of times. I don't know if we're in the worst of times or the best of times. From some people, there's a lot of anxiety in
Yeah.
the world. It feels like there is at the moment a lot of anxiety.
Yeah,
And
I think we can say definitively and actually quantifiably that that is true. Yeah.
yeah, and whether it be anxiety, well, I think what happens is anxiety compounds, and how you feed that anxiety is going to be very critical
Mm.
to, I think, to your survival as a person. And
Yeah.
I would say in the short term, but even the long term of your well being as an individual. And so, one of the things that I've tried to personally do, because I found myself going down a bit of a rabbit hole of sort of, all like, I like news. I probably read a lot of news more than most people I know, but I found it to be also in these times very detrimental to my mental health.
Yeah.
And I think that as a a person in the world doing your job, uh, doing family stuff, doing whatever you're doing, I think it's important to sort of tune out a little bit of all the what the world brings to you in terms of news sound bites and stuff, because it can actually be so demoralizing.
Mhm.
And even even think about our economy, things like that, where you're thinking, oh, I'm in a job, do I buy a house? Interest rates are going down now, they're going to go down further maybe in the new year, but still, like, I'm worried, the tariffs and all this kind of stuff. And I get all of it. It is super anxiety creating. Or, will our company survive? All of these kinds of things. And
Yeah.
I would just say these are things that you actually can't control. And I would say that, you know, it just, I've said this to other people, like, we got to tune out all, because the news doesn't print anything that's great at the
Right.
moment. I don't see any good news stories, actually. I see all the vitriol and all those kind of things. Go to work, enjoy your work, enjoy your team members, um, be mindful of what you bring,
Mm.
and and because I think what we bring, if it's, it's like you become the people you hang around with. I found that to be a very true statement. I know I'm all over the
Yeah.
place on this kind of thought, Chris,
Yeah.
but
No,
I've been
with
in
you.
places where I've been with negative people all day long, and I'm like, I come home negative. And then I've also been in places where people are like super positive, not falsely positive, but just good, positive people, great energy. And I've come on, I'm feeling great. I share that. I want to be
Yeah.
that. Because I have a lot to be thankful for, and I think as people of this world, we actually do have a lot to be thankful for. So I want to bring that to my colleagues. I want to bring that to my whatever you're doing, my yoga class, my whatever it might be. I want to bring that good sort of, you know part of me that the world can't take, and just bring that to people, and just fill them with the goodness, so that I know that I can experience. And also just give yourself a break. Like, sometimes I think people can get a little too twisted. Am I hitting the mark? Am I doing this? I think just, in a human point of view, is just to be kind, and just say, okay, take stock of what you're doing, and how do
Yeah.
I a be kind to myself? Because I think that if you can't be kind to yourself, it's very difficult for you to be kind to others. And I think it's just that is just, you know be kind to yourself, and that might be just listening to positive stuff, and not all the crap that's in the world. And again, just, you'll naturally bring that to each environment that you're engaged in: your home, your work, your sports, this, that, and the other. Like, I think that's an important thing.
I love it. I love it. And so surround yourself with the kind of people that you want to be.
Hmm.
Step into that, be to other people what you want to be around.
Yeah.
And I'm actually hearing be that person to yourself as well,
Yes. Yeah.
right? That kindness and so lots of noise out there in the world right now.
Mhm.
And I'm not hearing bury your head in the sand, but just creating those pockets of saying, actually, you know what? I'm going to look around my world and find those things and those people that are actually back to that value thing, that are adding value. I'm going to add my value as well. And I'm going to be kind to myself in the process. Like, I just think, there are times where simplifying how we move through this world really matters. This might just be one of those times. I think it might always be one of those times, but I think right now in particular really matters. I think it's
It does.
a beautiful invitation. Yeah.
And silence the things that are causing you grief. Like I've literally, and I don't mind sharing this. I've silenced a bunch of so-called friends on Facebook and Instagram, but there's a silence feature I know for sure
Yeah.
on Facebook where I'm going, everything you're feeding me right now is doing nothing for me.
Yeah.
So I've got two choices: silence what I'm hearing, or just because I don't, I like to see what goes on in the world,
Yeah.
or just keep ingesting the
Yeah.
stuff that I think is making the planet like unbearable for a lot of people. And so that's it's just kind of those things. You're right, not to put your head in the sand. I think we need to be aware of current issues and current things that are causing major grief in the world. But I also think that there's lots of good things. Like if we just sort of focus on the bad, it will be bad. If we focus on just the good, only the good, then it's only going to be good. But there is bad still. So I think this is a lovely balance, and just say, hey, look, when I'm with people, I just need to I want to bring goodness in everything that I do, and bring
Yeah.
that light and bring that juice and bring that, hey, come on, we can do this kind of attitude.
I love it.
That's me. No, not
Yeah.
everyone's like that, but that's me.
Classic driving lesson, right? What you are looking at is where you're going.
Yes, exactly.
Well, Paul Ansloos, thank you so much
You're
for
welcome,
taking some
Kris.
time,
My pleasure.
hanging out with me and stepping into this, what I think is a really valuable conversation. And so, yeah, it is not lost on us, and to those who have taken the time to listen and follow along. Uh, a good friend of mine says, if you're here for a reason. And so, as you walk away from this, what are some of the things that you can take and bring forward into your days? Yeah. So thanks, everybody. Thanks for listening. And until
Kris.
next time, take care,
Yeah.
everybody.